Hey, I wanted to welcome everyone. This is Kyle Robinson with MAPP Hitting, and I'm also here with Jody Gerut. Jody, wanted to welcome you to the call, and
Hello.
hope we get a chance to talk through MAPP Hitting and see what MAPP Hitting is all about. I know certainly excited about what's been happening lately, and I know you can certainly expand on more what you're hearing from the feedback from your organizations and some of the things that are included in the MAPP program. But first, really in short, what is MAPP?
Well, thanks, Kyle. We appreciate you being here with me. MAPP Hitting is an acronym. It stands for Mechanics, Approach, Power, Performance. And we really see it as an equation. Mechanics plus approach equals power plus performance. And what that means essentially is when you're hitting, we use certain elements when we hit. We use our physicality, but we also use our brains. And MAPP Hitting for me was a way to take a developmental step past, very typically read and react, and it's what got me to the big leagues and what sustained me there. And over time, as I started to do a little bit more with kids that were younger, I realized that what I was doing in the big leagues to hit fairly well could be taught to players, girls and boys everywhere at younger ages to optimize talent. So whether you've got a tremendous amount of talent or whether your talent was very limited, using MAPP Hitting was able to make below average hitters average and average hitters above average. So we're really excited about it.
That's great. That's great. So I guess MAPP Hitting, how is it different than maybe some of the other hitting programs or the baseball academy down the street?
Well, that's a good question, and the answer is that MAPP Hitting goes beyond how to just swing the bat. MAPP Hitting not only is how to swing the bat, but it's also how to hit. And let me explain what I mean by that. Each hitter has strengths and weaknesses. What MAPP Hitting and what the program does, what the MAPP Hitting program itself does is, step one, we assess mechanics. Okay, and that's how we're the same as everybody else. Okay, we assess mechanics. We have our own methodology for assessing mechanics. We do that in some cool ways for the players who submit us a video. We can do that in person, and we can do that online. It's been a very, very enjoyable experience for the players. We assess mechanics first and foremost. And again, that's how we're similar to everybody else. How we're different, however, is once the mechanics of a player have been optimized, that is to say, once that we feel like the player is about as good as he can get in the short term as it relates to mechanics, which have a lot to do with physicality and capability and effort. A lot of that has to do with effort too. We go on to a next step, and we say, okay, now that we've got this player, and now that he's got his way to swing, how do we translate this player and this swing into success on the field in a way in which the player's head and his brain is completely clear and all he's thinking about is the baseball. And what that looks like is essentially we've identified certain parts of the strike zones, certain hot parts of his swing where he really, really hits the baseball or she really, really hits the baseball and does it well. And what we'll do then is we'll train the hitter's brain to only react to those parts of the strike zone. That's the first part of it. The second part of it is that we'll train the hitter's brain to deactivate in the parts of the strike zone that the hitter doesn't do so well. So by doing both of those things together, and really that second part, that part about deactivating when it's out of the hitter's hot zone, that part's probably even more important. But those two things together, when done together, you all of a sudden now have a better hitter. And that's the really cool part. And you don't necessarily need to change or improve a hitter's swing in order to get that improvement. And that second part of it, that second part which we call approach, and that's the A in MAPP, that's the part where at higher levels, at higher speeds, in greater competition, that's a way that an average hitter can have success against an above average pitcher, one that has more talent than the hitter as a hitter. And that's essentially how I got to the big leagues and how I was able to stay and to do well. And as I look back in my career, you can look back in 2002, and you can see that I had a really, really good year. Not a great year, but a pretty good year. And that off season, I decided to teach myself how to MAPP hit. And at the time, I don't think I knew that that's what I was doing. But that off season, I decided to try and teach myself how to hit like the good/great big league hitters hit. And that year following, in 2003, when taken in total, the season in total, between AAA, a month in AAA, and then 5 months in the big leagues, my power numbers tripled from 10 to 27, so almost triple in 1 year. And I did not change my swing. I did not change the M. I changed the A. And that's why I'm a believer in it. And I got the way to do it, the way to MAPP hit, I got that from other great big league hitters. And that's why I'm so excited about it.
That's great. So, Jody, what you're saying is you're taking mechanics and then you're adding on to that with the A, the approach. Is the mental part of the game or the approach, is that done anywhere else?
Well, in other places, they certainly do assess, and I don't think it's new necessarily that people would know that the game of baseball, much of it is mental. What you don't really see very typically, though, is teams dedicating, let's say, practice time, or coaches really, emphasizing those things of importance during practice or even at home. So it's a really simple exercise to do, just to exemplify that point. If the game is 50% mental or 60% mental, as a coach, shouldn't we commit 50% of our practice or 60% of our practice to the mental side of the game? Or forget about that for a second. Shouldn't we commit 30% of practice, 10% of practice, 5% of practice, some percent of practice to the mental side if it's such a huge part of the game? I think the answer is yes, but I think a lot of times coaches don't do that, one, or two, would like to do that, but don't know how. And that second point is probably more consistent. It's just there's not a whole lot of methodology with out there with how to do that. And that is a huge component of MAPP hitting. It's a huge component because it's the most important part of it. Most of the time, hitters fail. So in a lot of ways, you can make the case that hitting isn't about living on the success as much as it is dealing with the failure. Because if you can deal with the failure appropriately, if you can deal with it constructively, then that hitter is prepared the next day with the same level of confidence that he had the day before. And that is the linchpin of a good, consistent hitter over the course of the season. Okay.
So what you're saying is the coaches who may have played at the higher levels, you and I both played at least in college, you played up in the bigs, for those of us who know that the mental part of the game is such a big piece to it, and we each learn our own lessons. Why isn't the coaches who understand that and know that that's a component of it, why is that really not taught as much, even though that they know that it's important?
Well, because the methodology is not really out there. And in some cases, the fact that the mental side of the game is important, the fact that the mental side of the game can get you better, sometimes that's the specificity with how that gets applied, especially once you get to the minor leagues, the upper minor leagues, and you're trying to break through to the major leagues. A lot of times you'll look at coaches who had beautiful swings when they were playing and had all the talent in the world, but couldn't convert that talent once the game started, those so-called 5 o'clock hitters. That next step past read and react, once you're in a game, that next developmental hitting step past read and react, that's not a widely known skill. That's not a widely known step. In fact, I would venture to say that if a lot of coaches who were really good hitters fully understood that point, that fully understood that there was, one, a thing past read and react, and two, there was a methodology, a training methodology that you could use to get good at that next step, I would venture to say that there are a lot of coaches out there who didn't advance their careers, but could have had they known that there was a training methodology out there that could get them past read and react. I think the pervasive thought is that big league hitters are just simply really good read and react hitters. But nothing could be farther from the truth. What's more accurate to say is that big league hitters are very, very skilled MAPP hitters. Big league hitters are very, very skilled at beating a pitcher to the spot, at educationally guessing and getting to a place before the pitcher is with his pitches at the highest level, because look, you can't read and react at the major league level. You can't do it. And if your corresponding talent isn't nearly as high as, let's say, a hitter in the upper minors, and you're at a lower level, then you can't take that step either, even if it's average pitcher. If your level of talent as a hitter is lower than that of the pitcher, it doesn't matter. It's just the ratio. If you don't do something to increase your chances at success against a pitcher with more talent than you as a hitter, the pitcher will beat you. And if you're at the level where all those pitchers are similarly talented and that's higher than that of your hitting ability, you tap out, and that's your ceiling, wherever that might be. That might be in the big leagues, that might be in the minor leagues, that might be in college ball, that might be in high school ball. But that's how that works. And what MAPP hitting essentially stands for is the way, that next step past making an average hitter great and a below average hitter average. And there's a lot of hitters that are in the minor leagues that do understand MAPP hitting, but are going to tap out at some place and don't quite get to the big leagues anyway. And there's plenty of examples out there of hitters who are pretty average hitters but advanced way far further than they ever should have because of MAPP hitting and because of their mental toughness.
Jody, if you could expand on that. So the concept of my mechanics are almost as good as they're going to get. And are you saying that you can get to the next level just with the A piece of it, or is there more to it?
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that if success in hitting was all about the mechanics, there would be way more Miguel Cabreras. There'd be way more Albert Pujols, more Mike Trouts. There would be more Tony Gwynn. There would be, a lot higher quality hitters. But hitting at the big league level, in a lot of different terms, and by a lot of different metrics, are at all-time lows in terms of production and performance. And what ends up happening is, a lot of the hitting instructors that are out there, because they don't know that there's anything past mechanics, that's all they do with their hitters. Is your back elbow is this, your front hip is this, your timing is this, your whatever the mechanical thing is. And they feel like if you just fix the M, then you're going to be okay. And there's plenty of big league examples where you just wish that the hitter would just consider changing his approach instead of trying to figure out the holy grail with regard to mechanics. It's just not how it works. A good hitter who's good mechanically, when taking a sound approach, once he's trained to do it, and it's not an easy path necessarily. This is work. There's a methodology. You can do it right and you can do it wrong, and you could do it half-heartedly and you won't see the result. But for those who really do want to dedicate themselves to the training and buy into the system, they will see the results and they will see them quickly. And there are many, many, many players and many, many, many teams in a relatively short period of time who have gone on with us and have seen the results within weeks. It's been amazing.
That's great. That's great. So before we get to some of those success stories, which I definitely want to hear, take me back through your big league experience. And was there a point where you said, "Oh my gosh, why didn't I know these questions to ask before?" Or was there a conversation that you had with one of your teammates that sort of turned the light bulb on?
Yeah, there was. And I'll take you back to 2001 and 2002. So, for those who don't know, when you're in the minor leagues and you're in spring training, there are opportunities to play in the big league spring training games. A lot of times those games are on the road, and it's because the big league guys, have things to do. They have families at home. They don't want to travel. And so for the players that get chosen, you have the opportunity a lot of times to play, innings 5 through 9 or innings 6 through 9 in the big leagues on the fields, and it's a really good way of transitioning and getting some experience with the training wheels on, so to speak. And I was one of those players for the Rockies when I was in the minor leagues. One of the benefits of doing that is that you have the opportunity to be around big league guys as opposed to minor league guys. And you get a chance to say, hey, what are these guys doing? What do these guys do during the game, pregame? What are these guys thinking? How do these guys prepare right before a game? What's a big league clubhouse like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes before a game? And I soaked in all of this stuff. Another part of it is that you're playing against another big league team. They're just right across the way in their clubhouse. So what I would do is I would go across the way once we got to the field. I'd go over and I'd knock on the door, and I'd say, can I get 2 minutes with this hitter? And I'd usually choose the best left-handed hitter on the other team because I myself hit left-handed. And I would get from him a sense of what he did at the plate when he was hitting. What was in his head? What was he trying to do? What was he thinking? Was he thinking anything? And
hold on,
how
Jody,
did that
let me get this straight. So you went over to the other team's clubhouse and asked for the best hitter on the team, and you picked his brain on how to hit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as crazy as that sounds,
great.
As crazy as it sounds, 95% of the time, the hitter was very accommodative. And for however you think about your hometown heroes, athletes, sometimes professional athletes get bad names, but I tell you what, in terms of taking some time for a no-name minor league player who was just curious about getting to the next level, they were incredibly generous. Their knowledge and with their expertise, and I don't use those words lightly. But over time, as I did that more and more, I realized, one, that it was different than how I hit. It was those guys were thinking and doing things that I wasn't doing. And two, there was a remarkable consistency with what they were doing, with what they were thinking, with how they were conducting their at-bats. They were detailed. They were specific. They were narrow. They were very narrow in their focus. And over time, you realized, I realized more and more, these guys aren't that different than me, in the sense that they weren't covering the whole strike zone when they were hitting. They were choosing very specific parts of the strike zone, and they were trying to beat the pitcher to that spot. And they were eliminating other parts of the strike zone because they knew that if they tried to do everything in an at-bat, if they tried to cover every part of the strike zone, then they would be worse as hitters, that they wouldn't do as well. In fact, that they had no shot. And that's just in recognition of the high quality of Major League pitching. As you did that more and more, as I did that more and more, I got extremely encouraged. But it also, at the end of the season, it also really changed the way I went about my off-season training. At the end of that 2002 season, I had my meetings with our general manager and our assistant general manager to come off a very good AA, AAA split season, half and half in the year, in the time, 2.5 months. And I had 298 with 10 home runs and some RBIs and some stolen bases, and I didn't get called up. And one of the outfielders who had finished the season in AA had gotten called up and leapfrogged me and gotten called up instead of me, which is how I saw it. And so I asked in my exit interview, hey, what do I got to do? What do I have to do to get to the big leagues? And they came back pretty strongly. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I didn't want to take that answer anymore. I'd heard that a couple different times in a couple different ends of seasons, and I didn't want to take that. So I asked again, what do I have to do? And they said the same thing. Just keep doing what you're doing. We're happy with your development. And I said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to say a few things, and if this is what you actually want to tell me, then don't say anything. I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk out. Like, here's what I'm going to do this off season. I'm going to go home and I'm going to figure out how to hit for more power. I'm going to drive more runs in. I'm going to score more runs. I'm going to walk more. I'm probably going to strike out a little bit more, and I'm probably going to shave a few points off my batting average potentially, but I will hit for more power, and
I will drive more runs in. And if that's what you want to say to me, then don't say anything. I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk out. And there was silence in the room, and they both looked at me, and they both smirked. And then they both looked at each other, and they didn't say anything. And I got up, and I ran out of that room, and there was no words exchanged. And I went home that off season, and I trained myself based on my conversations in spring training with great hitters. And from that training, over time, that off season, I fell into a rhythm and I fell into a routine on the training side. And that season following, spring training comes about. I come into big league camp, and I'm now a mid-tier prospect. And there's no spot. I got no shot to make the team out of spring training. But, I hit 368 with 4 home runs and not a whole lot of RBIs and over 1,000 OPS, on-base plus slugging. And I turned heads, and people started writing about me, and I was blasting out of obscurity. And I got optioned at the end of spring training. I deserved to make the team, but I knew there wasn't a chance for me to make the team. It was something that I could not control. And so I went down to AAA, and I did my best. I continued to do the things that made me a good hitter in spring training. And I hit 5 home runs in April, and I got called up April 26, 2003. I was in Pawtucket in the afternoon. It was a 3:30 in the afternoon. I get the call in from the manager, and he says, your plane to Oakland leaves in 2 hours. Say goodbye to your teammates. You're going to the big leagues for the first time. And I didn't have any reading material, and I tell you what, it was the shortest 6-hour flight I've ever had. And I got to Oakland. I got to my hotel at midnight, and we had a day game in Oakland the next day from Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And we had a day game the next day. And that day was my first in the big leagues, and I went 0 for 4. And I had a 10-pitch at-bat against John Halama in the first at-bat, and then I got my first hit and first RBI in the same at-bat on the following day against Tim Hudson. And from there, that end of that season was a 279, 22 home runs, and 75 RBIs in 5 months. And that rate of production put me on par with Mike Sweeney and some of the better hitters in the game, not just the rookies, but just the better hitters in the game in a RBIs per at-bat rate, a couple of different metrics that year. I was among the best in the league. And the whole thing started with me having the courage and interest to figure out how are the good guys hitting and how can I be like them. And that's how it started. And I stayed in the big leagues for as long as I could, for as long as the body held up. And here we are today.
That's great. That's great, Jody. I love the story and really your initiative to go out and get the answers, because there's not a lot of folks that would even ask their own teammates how to hit. It's kind of an ego thing, let alone to go across the way and ask hitters from other teams too. I just love that story. So from here, you've got these lessons that you've learned and the results that came from them for you. Now, what prompted you to name and create MAPP as a program?
Well, when MAPP was first born, MAPP came about with a hitting lesson that I didn't want to do, which is very ironic. At the time, I wasn't doing any hitting lessons whatsoever. I ran into a player who was just about to transfer. He was a pitcher, and I'd met him kind of randomly, and he realized who I was. He asked me if I could give him a hitting lesson. I said no. He walked me to my car. He put his hand on my car door, and he said yes. And I said begrudgingly, okay, yes. So we did that the next day, and I let him hit on the tee, and I watched him, and I said, here's what you're doing well, here's what you're not doing so well, and here's how to fix it. Do this for a little bit, you should be fine. And he said, okay, that's great, but I got a game tonight. And I said, oh, that's easy. If you got a game tonight, don't swing at anything inside. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, go ahead and put the ball on the tee, put it on the inside corner, I'll see where you're at. And he took a swing, and he didn't miss it, but he mishit it. And I said, go ahead and try again. And he mishit it again. And I said, you can be here all day. You're not going to be able to hit that pitch as long as you're swinging that way. And I said, if you want to be good in the game tonight, just avoid the inside corner and stay on the outside corner. Sit away, is how I told him, and try and drive the ball to left center field. And that was it. And I thought that was going to be the end of the relationship with this player. And he turned around and texted me that night at 11 o'clock. And he said, Jody,
two doubles off the wall to left center field. You're the best. When are we hitting again? And I said, oh, geez. But those four things, what to do well, what not to do well, how to fix them, but then particularly that fourth part, what to do in a game if I have this swing. Those four components became the basis of my lessons. And as I started to do that more, I realized that there was a huge lack of that part of it, that sort of translatable, how do we get good, how do we use this in games to increase game results, positive game results. And, after a while, I started thinking back on my career and how I did it, what happened, and then, watching this player who ultimately transferred and transferred to a Division III school and was one of the best hitters on his team, hit cleanup as a hitter on his nationally ranked Division III school. I realized that there was something here, and I drew all the components on a dry erase board and I stared at it for 4 or 5 days, and I said, "What is this?" Because this is what I did. This is what I know other hitters do. This is what Adrian Gonzalez does. This is what Miguel Cabrera does. This is what Manny Ramirez does. This is what Tony Gwynn does. This is what these guys do and did. What is this? And from there, I realized that it was hitting with an approach. It was different, and it takes courage and it takes training. So I was thinking about what the outcome for me was, and what the inputs were, and I was thinking, well, I paid attention to mechanics, and then I started taking an approach once I thought I was about as good as I could get, and that outgrowth was increased power, and it was increased overall performance, and that's where MAPP hitting came in, and that's how that started.
Okay, that's a great first example, and it's sort of the light bulb that turns on. Do you have some other examples of guys or girls that you've worked with that had similar success?
Well, sure, of course. I mean, numerous players, and from the college level, actually from the pro level on down. The college one was simply the first one, but very soon afterwards, I started working with some high school players, and there was a senior near my town who was very strong academically and very strong defensively as a catcher. And when I say very strong defensively, I say 1.8, 1.9, consistent pop time down to second base, could call a baseball game, very, very smart, very, very bright, street smart as well as book smart. He was the package, but you know what? He couldn't hit. And so he came in and we worked together, and I let him hit for the first time. And I really wanted to help this player because of who he was, and because who his family was in the community as well. And so thankfully, when he first started to hit, I could see immediately. I saw the boogeyman in his swing mechanics, and I said, let's try and do this a different way. And he made the adjustment immediately, and his whole world opened up that day. And he was able to get to certain spots in the strike zone, hit with authority in ways that he wasn't able to do in those particular zones. And then we worked again a second time, and to his credit, he held that adjustment. He remembered what he needed to do. He made that adjustment go from conscious to subconscious, and he went all over the place after that to get himself to prospect camps and to get that video in front of other college coaches. And as a high school senior, which is unheard of in college recruiting, as a high school senior, he goes and gets himself a 50% ride to a school that was in the College World Series last year. As a high school senior, he goes from having his best offer be less than 50% from a low Division I school to getting a 50% ride from a school that was in the College World Series the year prior as a high school senior. And for me locally, and for us locally, that was the big bang that put MAPP hitting on the map near where I live. From there, I got really, really excited and really encouraged about working with kids that were younger. That was the next question, was, well, how young can these applications go? So the next lesson was with a 12-year-old from a town near where I grew up. We started working together and he had a pretty good swing. It wasn't bad. He had some things that he was doing that was that needed some polish, just needed some sanding. That's it. But what his challenge was his brain, because he was an ADHD kid, and he had a lot of difficulty concentrating, and he needed his world to be narrow and very, very small when he hit in order for him to have that success on the field when we were hitting. And so his challenge for me was for me to teach him the method, for him to understand how to hit with approach, and then have the courage and confidence to do that once the game started. And very, very soon after those first 2 lessons, Dad left me a very nice message on my phone, which I still have, which I've saved, and I still have as part of my own personal archive and memoirs, as he's telling me that his son hit 2 line shots to a place on the field that he wasn't previously hitting the ball to on the pull side. And from there it's just exploded. I can go on and on. I could.
Great, Jody. So, Jody, the stories are great. I love the specific examples, and you're kind of inching your way down toward the lower levels and lower ages, which if the folks at the big league level can implement this approach, how far can it go down? And what have you seen, and really what's the age level where this is appropriate?
Well, Kyle, I got down to about age 8, where I could still see some meaningful, noticeable, unambiguous increases in performance. The difference between 7, 8, and 8 was about where I saw some diminished returns. And what that usually entails more specifically is, the challenges, the components of what we need to do to get better at younger ages tips a little bit further towards mechanics, because there's less physicality, there's less of a base as to how to hit. The mechanical components, when cleaned up, can really open up a player's world. So the younger a player gets in the MAPP process, the more emphasis must be taken regarding mechanics. And we believe in the way that we do mechanics. We certainly love it. We keep things extremely simple. We concentrate on the 4 or 5 things that good hitters throughout the course of the game, throughout the history of the game, have done. We stay to, generally speaking, to those elements that can't be argued. And we try to customize those lessons to the player and to the player's brain. So we certainly realize that, out there in this world of hitting, this little tiny niche world of hitting, that mechanics can be an extremely divisive issue. We choose not to get involved in that. We choose to just simply let the results of how the kids play out their seasons and their off season, how they feel about the way that they're performing. We choose to let the results just simply dictate how we're doing, not necessarily drawing a line in the sand and saying, hey, this is how we need to teach it. This is how hitting must be taught. We certainly let the results in the field do the talking, and that's how it should be for every hitting coach.
Well, along those lines, I imagine you're talking with baseball and softball programs where they are focused on mechanics, and they have certain methods for teaching, and they're probably focused on mechanics and have been working with those kids for a while. How are some of those organizations taking to your message about MAPP?
Well, what they're doing is they're seeing the value in it because of my playing history, and because the application truly is an opening to a box that very few people actually have the key for. And admittedly so. In a lot of cases, a good hitting instructor will have a very good idea of how to deliver a message mechanically, and he might have a list of success stories to back it up. At this point in the evolution of hitting examinations, hitting evaluations, there hasn't been an angle that hasn't been recorded. There hasn't been a dimension that hasn't been recorded. There isn't a whole lot left to know about what good, great hitters do mechanically to swing a bat. So in terms of that knowledge base, that's what's kind of tapped out. To those travel teams who have the really, really good hitting coaches who do mechanics very well, I applaud. And the way we're able to work with so many different travel teams is when that coach is on site and he's got a lock on his players mechanically, but he knows that there are things that he won't be able to teach them as it relates to approach. We say very simply, you're here, terrific. You deal with the M.
You deal with the mechanics. We'll deal with the A. We'll deal with the approach, and we'll try and make this hitter better. In a lot of cases, if there are mechanical issues as we see them with a hitter, what will end up happening is we'll see the stagnancy in the development based on our tracking system. We'll see the stagnancy in the development, and we'll let the results do the talking for us, and hopefully, inevitably, the hitting coach will say, you know, this hitter's not getting any better. Is there something that you see mechanically with this hitter that I'm not seeing? And we'll say, yes, coach, actually, we do see something. We can try, with your permission, we can try to see if we can make that adjustment with the hitter. Is that okay with you? Of course it is. Let's get this hitter better. We want this hitter to take this next step. If he's got something mechanical that's blocking certain part of coverage into a certain zone, by all means, let's do this together. And we go about it that way. And we've had this situation come up several times. It's worked beautifully. We've designed the MAPP hitting system to be able to work in coordination and combination with those hitting coaches and those travel teams that have even the most strict methodology and training and coaching as it relates to hitting. So we're able to complement each other very, very well. And the hitters are responding very positively.
Okay, so it sounds like if you had the opportunity to do the M piece, the mechanics, your team is comfortable doing that, but for the folks who already have that in place, it's a nice complement of skills to just focus on the approach. Is that right?
That's right. We do what we need to do to help the team get better as it's seen by the team. We're essentially consultants. So if the team needs us to run its practice entirely, if the team is run by a person or a group of people who aren't necessarily coaches, don't necessarily have extensive playing experience, don't have experienced coaches running their teams, and they want us to run their practices and take over, we can do that, and we do that. We use some of our instructional tools to streamline that process, to systematize that process, and it works beautifully. If they have a rhythm and a method that is already in place that they don't want to break, and they just need us to work individually with hitters for 5 or 10 minutes or so as the practice is going on. We just ask for a cage, you ask for a tee, ask for some balls, and we stay over in the corner very silently. We work with every hitter individually, and we ask them, hey, first question, how are you doing? How's your swing? Do you feel like it can get better? Do you want to get it better? And if the answer is you know what, coach, I'm good with where I'm at, I'm okay with it, even if it can use some improvement, at least in our opinion, even if that player's swing or that player's approach can benefit from some mechanical adjustments or some mental adjustments, we will remain silent, because we cannot help anybody, we cannot help any team that is happy with the way things are, whether those things are good or whether those things are bad. A team and players, they need to have ears and a willingness to be coachable and to listen and to implement some of the things that we're doing. And if it's not there, nothing's going to work. So we lay dormant, we lay silent until and unless the player says, hey, you know, I need help. Can you help me? Or I'm doing pretty well, but hey, if you see something, let me try it real quick. And if it doesn't work, you know, we'll go back. And that's kind of how that development process goes.
Okay. One of your story of you learning the MAPP principles and going from 10 home runs to, you said 27 home runs.
Yep.
One of the things that I'm trying to connect is how MAPP increases power. So what's the connector between MAPP and improving and increasing power?
Well, when you train in different parts of the strike zone, when I say the strike zone, more specifically, the entire range from the inside corner to the outside corner in terms of contact points, which we refer to as the hit line. And the hit line is from all the way to the inside corner to the outside corner. We've got names for 5 different locations as we see the strike zone to be. And so when I'm talking about covering the entire strike zone, I'm talking about covering all 5 points in the hit line. And what we're trying to do as hitters is to get exceedingly expert at all 5 locations on the hit line. And we do that in 3 different stages before the game starts. One, first and foremost, is when the ball's not moving on the tee. I use the tee every day before big league games. It was an indicator for me as to what I had that day to compete with. It is absolutely a huge part of this, because getting good at all 5 positions on the tee, all 5 hit locations, is the first step. And getting polished, on understanding what you need to do, adjust your swing to successfully cover particular points in the hit line, that's the first step that needs to happen. The second step is in a soft toss, front toss way when you're doing underhand flips from the front. And that's now the ball's now moving. And the power increase comes from, I've dominated the tee, and I've dominated all 5 positions, and I know what I need to do to adjust my swing a little bit to get and elicit a line drive when a ball is in a certain part of the strike zone. From there, what we're doing is we're trying to train the hitter to have an idea, to have an approach, to have a plan before he steps into the batter's box, and to execute that plan and that plan only, because once a hitter is able to track and identify a pitch that is in his zone, and he's not worried about any other pitch or any other zone, we now have the opportunity to increase bat speed and increase effort and increase general gruntness with an aggressiveness and violence in the swing, because we're not worried about anything else other than one spot. So the more places, you can see that very easily as it relates to the 2-strike approach, which is something that everybody knows and everybody does. The 2-strike approach, just as an example, is something that everybody does, and what that means basically is defend the zone. Don't strike out. Cover more parts of the hit line. Cover every part of the hit line. And that naturally leads to a more defensive style of hitting, because you're now trying to cover and defend the entire strike zone. That's a different mentality. To me, it's a negative mentality. It was one that I never actually responded well to. But it's a good example of the difference. When you're only dealing with 1 or 2 parts of the zone as opposed to 5 in a 2-strike approach, you now have the ability to be way more aggressive, way more violent. Hitting, in essence, is a controlled chaos. It is a violent action that happens in a very, very short period of time. And it is a very precise action that you must perform in order for it to work out. And in order for that to happen, we need to turn the volume down. We need to narrow the focus and stay within that focus and learn how to stay in that focus, because there's a lot of things going on in the field. There's the positioning, there's the stands, there's the crowd, there's the umpire, there's the catcher, there's the panic, there's the disbelief in the work that's been done. It's very easy to abandon an approach at the last minute. When I say you have I've often referred to during this time, Kyle, talking about having the courage and confidence to stick with the plan. That is learned. You have to take that leap of faith and realize how well that's going to work out for you in the game. You're going to have to do that on the tee first when the ball's not moving, and then in front toss, in front flips when the ball's moving just a little bit, and then in batting practice when it's overhand and the ball's moving just a little bit faster, to ultimately have the confidence to say, look, there's nothing left. I've done this when the ball's not moving. I've done this when the ball's moving a little bit, moving slowly. I've done this when the ball's moving fast in BP. Now it's time for the game. I've done the rest of this. Now let's do this in the game. And the first time it happens, the first time you see it happen, you say, man, this is it. I have the courage and confidence. I took a shot, 2-0. I'm sitting dead red over the middle of the plate, and I got my pitch. And bang, there it goes. It sails right out of the yard. And that happened numerous times. It happened numerous times in that spring training in 2003 with the Indians. It happened in Vero Beach against the Dodgers, against Wilson Alvarez. And it happened at home in Cleveland. We're still in Winter Haven. It happened at that old stadium in Winter Haven numerous times against Paul Quantrill, against Corey Lytle, a bunch of good pitchers. And once you get a sense of, whoa, that works, once you get a sense of that, then you're going to want to do it over and over and over again, because who doesn't want to hit for more power? Who doesn't want to do it? Look, every hit, every at-bat is a real estate negotiation. You are trying to invite that pitcher to make an offer in the zone and in the zones that you're looking for. You're inviting him to make a mistake. He's inviting you. He's making offers on the far inside corner and on the far outside corner. And you're saying no, 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 over and over again. And you're waiting for him to make a mistake, for him to get weak, and to make that offer to you at a place where you can make an offer back and say, you know what, I got you. I got you. You put your guard down for a second. You got lazy. You didn't think I was going to swing here. You didn't believe in me as a hitter. But you know what? I got you. That's how every single at-bat goes. Watch any game at any level, but particularly at the big league level, you'll watch. And when you look at every at-bat like a negotiation in real estate, the whole world starts to open up.
Okay, and I'm with you. So what really this is coming down to is, instead of trying to be a good hitter for the whole plate, you're picking the things that you're good at. And you are saying, I believe in those spots, and if I see something that's there, bam, I'm going to put a nice, hard, aggressive swing on it. And the results have shown it.
Well, yeah, that's right. What you're doing before every day, before every game, is you're saying, what do I have to compete with that day? What am I not doing so well? And you're taking the things that you're doing well that day, and you're saying, here's what I'm going to do today. Here's what I've got to work with. And let's hope that that lines up with what the pitcher's going to do. The process is, know what you're good at for that day. But in the time that you've got to work on your swing, those limited moments in the beginning before you get out with your team, before you take batting practice, work on those developmental points just to the point where you're getting good work in and that you don't lose confidence. Because you can get in the weeds really, really quickly by trying to work too hard and too much on things that you don't do well and areas of the strike zone, of the hit line that you don't do well. And look, those adjustments, those improvements, they're going to be made over a period of weeks more likely than not, or months more likely than not, or even years. Sometimes the issue isn't even mechanical, it's just physical. You physically can't do it because of lack of strength, because of lack of flexibility, and you can't do anything about it. Hitting's difficult. It's mostly negative experiences. So as a hitter, I need to figure out ways to maintain my levels of confidence over time. And the way you do that is you stick to the things that you do well. And you try and over again to do the things that you do well within that state of aggression. And when you figure out how to do those things regularly, the world opens up. Not only does it explain your success, but maybe more specifically, it helps you deal with failure. And let me expound on that point because it's a really important one. Look, if you, as a hitter, are 15 years old and you don't hit the breaking ball very well, and the team that you are playing against knows it, and for whatever reason that day the pitcher had his breaking ball, he did well with it, he threw strikes, and your approach was into your strengths, which is, I hit the fastball well, and I didn't get any fastballs to hit that were in the zone. I only got breaking balls. And you end up 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts and a walk. At the end of the day, when you're accounting for how you did that day, what you can say to yourself, and maybe more specifically what you can write if you're a journal person, is you can say, look, I had my approach today. My approach was to sit dead red because that's what I do well. The guy that was on the mound, he threw breaking balls. He did it well today. Most of the time, pitchers aren't going to do that well for that long a period of time, for that many innings. They got me. Too bad for me. The next day is coming. The next game is coming. I feel confident. Here we go. And close the book on that day. That's just baseball. That's how you deal with that. And being able to deal with an 0 for 3 or an 0 for 4 with 2 or 3 or 4 strikeouts in a constructive way, well, it's not easy. But I tell you what, it's a lot easier when you're taking an approach, and that approach doesn't line up with the way that the pitcher pitched you. Because now it's not for lack of talent that you didn't do well. Now it's because of something that you can control. And now it's not an issue. Now we can go on and still take the next day to say, look, I'm still the same player. I still believe in myself equally. And now we're the same hitter. We don't have an expectation of a negative out in the games to follow. because we've controlled it and we've built on it, and we can say, you know what, that's just baseball, forget it. As Mark McGwire used to say, that's just baseball, forget it.
That's great, Jody. Well, hey, we're running out of time here. Hey, it's been a real honor talking with you today. We've covered a lot of the components of MAPP, your story of creation and success, and some of the success that you've had with some of your students. Now, for coaches and programs that are interested in taking another step forward, what can they do to reach out to you, and what can they expect from you if they do?
Well, you can go to www.mappsports.com. That's MAPP with 2 P's.com. And you can visit the site. You can learn a little bit more about MAPP Hitting. You can see some of the things that we're doing on there. You can check out the pricing plans, which we're really proud of, because we feel like we're meeting travel teams where they're at with a lot of some of our programs at the team level. And then we also have some for the individuals who are playing on teams that maybe don't want to do a program with MAPP Hitting at the moment. They can do something on the individual level with us and take control of their own careers that way. There's plenty of good things. We're doing blogs monthly. We're doing emails monthly. We can do semi-private lessons. We can do private lessons, especially if you're in the Chicago area. There is an option for out-of-town folks if you're not in the Chicago area, for us to get on the road, get on planes, come out, and see in person. We do that now for colleges, as we just started to do that for colleges and just started to get our first clients at the collegiate level. So we're really excited about that. But go to www.mappsports.com, learn more. Send us an email if you need something specific for one of your hitters or specific for one of your teams or organizations. Send us something specifically on email, and we'll take a look at it, and we'll see how we can make it a match. The last part of this is that we have worked with 7 different recreational leagues around the Chicagoland area with regards to clinics in the off seasons, instructional clinics, both for hitting specifically, but also for general baseball instruction. And those have been wild successes, and they've been really, really great because in some cases we've been able to work with the local high schools and get the local high schools on board to teach the young kids and to interact with the young kids on some of the stations during the clinic, and the kids feel great about it because they're getting connected to the big boys at the local high school. The local high school kids feel great about it, one, because they're getting more fans coming out to their games as a result of working with the youth leagues, but also we spend some extra time after those clinics are done to work with the high school hitters, and it's our way of sort of paying them back to for working the camps for us and with us prior to that, and it's been nothing shy of wild success. We're really excited about it.
Great, Jody. Well, hey, thank you again. I really appreciate your time and hopping on, and continued luck with and success. Sounds like a pretty phenomenal program, and something that it really seems to be missing in a lot of coaching arenas. So I can certainly say that for myself and my career throughout playing ball, that I didn't have anything like this. And there was elements of mental game, but having a narrow approach, I think, would have been a phenomenal tool. So look forward to hearing more, and wish you the best of luck. And we'll probably have a follow-up to one of these calls fairly